My name is John DeCarmine. I have the honor of leading the team at Grace Marketplace, a low barrier housing focused shelter in Gainesville, Florida. We've been around for about 10 years. Started off a little bit, not high barrier, but certainly not as low barrier as we've gotten. And over the past 8 years have really grown to embrace fully being a housing focused low barrier shelter. And that has led, along with the work of our community partners, to a reduction in homelessness of about 40% community-wide, and then a reduction in unsheltered homelessness of 53%. To me, it's easiest to define what a low-barrier housing-focused shelter is by first thinking about the models of shelter that we've seen previously that we now call high-barrier shelters. Imagine if you called your doctor and said, "Doctor, I'm sick, I need some help." And your doctor said, "As soon as you're not sick anymore, come back, and then I'll take care of your ailments, and then I'll take credit for getting you healthy." In a lot of ways, when we tell people you're not welcome here until you have income and you haven't had a drink in 30 days and you've reconnected with friends and family and you've stabilized any mental health issues that you've got, if you've done all of those things, then come in and we'll take care of your problems, we would think that it was the most absurd thing ever. So the importance to me of a low barrier system is that we are designing our services and our programs and our policies to meet the needs of the people who are out on the street, rather than demanding that the people who are out on the street meet the needs of our programs or policies. Low barrier shelter at its simplest just asks that we meet people where they are, that we accept them and allow them to receive services based on their behavior when they're in your program, as opposed to something they may have done 20 years ago or 10 years ago, or to a service provider down the street. We know that for people to get back into housing, we need to have all of the support we can possibly give to them. For the vast majority of people, there's something that's preventing them from coming into shelter. And low barrier shelters try to make sure, whether that's through not requiring identification or not requiring income or not requiring adherence to some kind of health program, that those individuals still have access to all of the services that we can provide on their journey to get out of homelessness and back into housing. Housing-focused shelters just get to the core of what we've got to do. We talk to our case managers here and we kind of train them around this notion that if you are spending your time with somebody and you're spending, in a traditional setting, maybe 25% of your time talking about employment and 25% of your time talking about health problems and 25% of your time talking about whatever the most recent crisis is, well, at the end of the day, if you have that short period of time with somebody, you've only got 25% of your time left to actually talk about the thing that's going to get them off of the street and back into housing. So the housing focus of the shelter simply says we may only get one or two opportunities to engage with somebody before they make a decision about if they think we are valuable to them. Housing focused shelter says that if we're going to do all of this really, really difficult work, why not focus on the one thing that's actually going to solve their homelessness, as opposed to maybe they've got a slightly better job, but they're still homeless and all those problems around that are still part of the problem. Chances are in your community, there is another agency that does some of those other things better than you. No matter how many trainings I put my staff through on how to deal with or work with people experiencing a mental health crisis, they're not going to be a better response than somebody from the behavioral health center. No matter how often we talk about employment with somebody, they're never going to be able to access the resources through us that they would be able to access by working with a workforce board or a career source or some other kind of entity like that. For me, the big consideration around whether or not we should go low barrier and housing focused, first is an ethical consideration. Like, this work is so difficult. Who are we to take on this work and then not have it be as effective and meaningful as possible? So on one hand, if you're already putting in the hours, you're already putting in the time, already dealing with the exhaustion and the difficulties of this work, it damn well better just make a difference. So low barrier shelter, housing focused shelter is one of the key ways to make a difference. The second thing I would say is, as communities start to talk about low barrier shelters, they're not looking at how many people went through the shelter. They're not looking at if you reduced the length of time somebody spent homelessness. Generally, your entire program is being evaluated based on whether or not somebody saw a homeless guy on the side of the street on their way to work. So we don't have a lot of control about that. But what we do know is that what we do gets easier when we serve more people and make sure that they get housed more quickly. It also extends over to outreach. It extends over to housing providers. Imagine trying to find a person that's been notoriously difficult to find and they're in bed number 10, as opposed to they're in the vicinity of Main Street and 50th Avenue. It's easier for all of the other parts of the system if we are providing that one safe central location from which all the other work can occur.